Hey guys, Tom Barclay here. I've just got back from the Tottenham Hotspur training ground to do the latest press conference with Ange Postecoglou ahead of Aston Villa on Friday night, a Premier League game that, let's be honest, no Spurs fan is really that bothered about right now, apart from the fact that it's the last match before next week's absolutely massive Europa League final in Bilbao against Manchester United. And a real sort of quandary, I suppose, for Ange Postecoglou, how he goes about his team selection for this particular Villa game with that massive game looming. Does he rest players? If he does, how long? It will have been quite a long time since the sort of likely starting 11 that played against Bergvall will have played. So does he risk them? What if he gets more injuries? Also, now that Dejan Kulusevski is injured, and I'll come on to more specifics about him in a minute, does he try and get creative and try some things out right at the last minute to fill that creativity void which he's now got, seeing as his three main playmakers in Maddison, Bergvall and Kulusevski are all out for the rest of the season. All much for him to ponder and for me to sort of consider in this video, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think he should do, whether it's too late to sort of change tack, whether it be positional changes, whether it be formation change. I'm not getting the sense that that's very likely, to be honest, at this stage. Probably more potentially a player from a different position and a sort of unnatural position being given a new role, if anything at all. And I'll come on to that in a minute. But let's start with Kulusevski. So unfortunately, yesterday, which was Wednesday, today being Thursday, we discovered the news that Kulusevski had gone under the knife, had surgery on his right patella, having injured it against Crystal Palace in a challenge, a collision with England defender Mark Guehi early on in the game, came off in the 19th minute. Ange at first obviously said that he was hoping it was a knock, but today he discovered that as soon as it sort of settled down, the injury sort of blew up, and they realised they had to do something, and he went under the knife, and he has, as of today, ruled him out for months. We tried to push him on what that meant exactly, including a good question from my friend George Cheshens at PA, citing how when you go online, which is always like a dodgy way to go about things, but when you go online and look up patella surgery sort of recovery times, you get players have been out for up to a year, 6 to 12 months. And when he was put to him essentially like that, how long could it be? 6 to 12 months possibly. He said it wouldn't be anywhere near 12 months. He didn't say anything about 6 months, which I'm slightly worrying about how long this is going to be out for. And he said, we will see, when asked whether he'd be fit for the start of the season. You would think, just based on the nature of a surgery like this, on an injury like this, and the fact that he has said months, let's be honest, it's May now, start of the season's August, that's 3 months already. It would not be surprising to see him miss the start of the season based on the nature of the injury and players who've gone through it before, and what Ange said with the phrase months. But obviously we're just speculating there, so fingers crossed for Decky. The most important thing as of this season is, unfortunately, he is out for the Europa League final, which is such a big blow. I mean, Ange has got a lot of criticism this season from some quarters about the sheer volume of injuries, specifically muscle injuries that his team have had. And, I've looked at it, and I've looked at a lot of the pieces that have been written, the comments that have been made, and I have to say it's hard not to draw some sort of parallel between his intense style and the amount of sprints that his team do generally in matches and the sheer volume of muscle injuries. But I feel like in this particular scenario, that is kind of irrelevant if you do buy into that sort of way of thinking. That is more specifically about muscle injuries. This was a freak collision, of which they've had a few this season. You think of Vicario with his broken ankle at Man City, and the fact that he played on, which probably didn't help, even though he put in probably the best sort of, given the circumstances, goalkeeping performances I've ever seen, given that he had a broken ankle when doing it at the Etihad. Or, obviously, Dominic Solanke having a shot in training and doing his knee, Bergvall doing his ankle ligaments in training. Lots of bad luck on that front. And it seems like Kulusevski is a similar story here, where he's sort of taken a blow from Mark Guehi in a collision, and and that's led to this injury, which is a real shame for him. But yeah, obviously he's out. There had been a bit of, it seems like rumours online about Lucas Bergvall possibly making some sort of shock recovery in time to play in the Europa League final, and he was asked about that, Ange, and he basically shut it down. He did say that they never thought it was a long-term injury, but obviously when he got injured, which was the day before the first leg of the semi-final against Burda, the home game, so he would have got injured. It was in training, and the day of the game was May the 1st, so I guess it was right at the end of April. He said he didn't think it was going to be a really long-term injury, but because there wasn't long left to go in the season, it would rule him out for the rest of the season. So he is apparently out of the boot, and he's making his first tentative steps on the grass, but he's not going to make it back. So anyone who's getting excited about that, they can sort of rule it out now based on what Ange was saying today. And it sort of leads you to wonder, with Bergvall, Maddison, obviously, he's himself facing a fight to be fit for the start of next season with his knee problem. They have a real crisis in the middle of midfield in terms of playmakers. What is he going to do? You think the most likely is still to go with that midfield of Sarr, Bentancur and Bissouma, and hope they can, the fact that those players are so used to playing midfield, they can sort of conjure up some creativity elsewhere. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him get a bit creative, potentially even in the Villa game, to try some things out. Let's be honest, it's a bit of unfortunately now, I mean, people might sort of bristle at the suggestion that Villa away is a free hit, but let's be honest, there's nothing to be gained from the league here. And if he were to be half considering at this last minute of playing a player out of position in a more creative role, I've seen a lot of you guys have suggested playing Solanke deeper and Richarlison in behind, or perhaps Sonny in the middle, given he's got a bit decent, he's got good technical ability on the ball, or even Porro playing in an attacking midfield position, seeing as he's one of the most, if not the most creative player in the team anyway at right back. You do think that if he were to move, they would lose a lot from his creative instincts from right back. Just think of Trent Alexander-Arnold playing in the middle for England compared to what he can do for Liverpool. It doesn't feel like it really plays to his strengths, to be honest. But it's an option for Spurs at this point. And I don't know, I wouldn't rule it out based on what he was saying, particularly in the embargo section today. I'm not going to go into the quotes, but just a sort of suggestion. He didn't sort of knock it down, I suppose. I wouldn't be surprised. But I still think probably most likely when it comes to the final itself is probably players who play in their natural positions. But obviously he's only got 4 players to pick from who are natural to midfield. Gray, who's barely played in midfield for him most of the time, and then the other 3 that I've just mentioned. So I would not be surprised if in the Villa game he does try something a bit different. On Son, obviously suggested whether he might play in the middle. He is definitely going to feature. And he said he's trained well recently. And he will play. He definitely play and get at least half a game. So whether he starts the game or comes off the bench remains to be seen. But Sonny, the captain, will be back. If any of you have been wondering, you may have forgotten or stopped caring, I suppose, to be brutally honest, where Timo Werner's been. He's obviously ineligible anyway for the Europa League, so he wouldn't be around for that. But he is he could have played in the Premier League. He apparently has been injured. He is injured with a hamstring problem. So even if Ange wanted to play him or include him, which is debatable anyway, that's the reason why you haven't seen him. So yeah, how does he play it going into this Villa game? I mean, he can't afford any more injuries, particularly in the middle. And yet, the Burda game second leg was May the 8th, and we're now that was a Thursday. It's a week on from that. Game's on Friday, but the Europa League final's not till Wednesday. So just shy 13 days between the second leg of the semi-final and the final itself. He obviously rotated massively, heavily against Crystal Palace with, was it just Porro and Bentancur, maybe someone else starting, and obviously they only played, I think Bentancur got half, Bissouma came on at half time, Porro came off just before the hour. So he heavily rotated that then. So you'd think they would be fresh for this game, but he cannot afford any more injuries, particularly in certain positions. So I'm really struggling to work out how he's going to go about this game. I mean, the team that I sort of came up with was, I think Vicario will come back in goal rather than Kinski. I know Kinski plays Palace, but I think Vicario comes back into this. But even, if he stuck with Kinski, you wouldn't be surprised at this stage. I'm sort of half presuming that Romero and Van de Ven may be rested again, just because of all the problems they've had. But then again, is that more risky, given that he wants to keep them fresh? Maybe he gives them literally half and brings them up at half time, no matter what the scoreline is. Maybe that's more likely, that Romero and Van de Ven start, just to keep them ticking over, which, to be honest, is not exactly respectful towards the Premier League. But from a Tottenham's point of view, that is not important right now. I'm sure if Aston Villa's rivals see a heavily changed Spurs team or a heavily changed team during the match itself, they won't be too happy with that in the race for 5th place. But that's obviously not Spurs' priority. They've got to do what's right for them going into this final. So maybe those two, but you would not be surprised if it was Danzo and Davis. Equally, if it is those two, perhaps Davis plays instead of Udogie. Maybe Udogie starts because he wasn't involved the other day. Spence. I mean, honestly, I'm really struggling on this one. I mean, I could see a world where it's a Spence, Danzo, Davis, Udogie backline. Bissouma and Bentancur starting with Son at number 10 just to try it out, just because he sort of maybe has a chance to have a go at that. And Sarr and Gray played the whole game against Palace. Maybe there's an option there. Johnson didn't get any game time, so I think he'll probably start. Honestly, I mean, maybe Richarlison comes in at the top and Tala wide left, but I mean, you could make so many different cases for so many of these players. As you can tell, I'm completely sort of at a loss, really. Don't know what to expect. I think when it comes down to it, with 5 days left to go ahead of the final, he'll probably go for a stronger team, but go out with basically the main objective being don't get injured. So play to keep them ticking over, but don't get injured. That's probably what will happen. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was actually thinking about it, a strong lineup, but maybe he tries one tweak in it, whether it be, if he wants to try something out, maybe Porro starts in a creative position, Spence starts right back, creative midfield position, and Spence starts right back, or Son starts in the number 10 position, Tell starts out left. I don't know. I'm fascinated. I'm not going to the game, but I may do a video afterwards because I'm going to watch on TV. I am fascinated to see how he plays it. It is a tricky one. Let me know what you're thinking. I know a lot of you will probably say Solanke or Richarlison up top. Don't know how many of you considered Porro, whether that's a good idea, playing him in the middle, or you think Son has got the ability to play in the middle. He obviously played in the middle up front last season a lot, but it's a bit different playing number 10. That's all these different options. And also, what do you want to see in terms of the big hitters, particularly at the back? Do you want to see them start, keep them ticking over? Or do you just basically want to see them wrapped in cotton wool, like Ange said he would do the other day, just generally, to keep them, to ensure they don't get injured? It's amazing at this stage we're now at this just don't get injured phase of the season. But that's where we're at. And yeah, let me know and I'll speak to you afterwards. Cheers, guys.